I'm going to start this over again. And I'm going to tell you the story. But I'm going to do it a little bit differently this time. I think that before I was just depending too much on clips instead of my actual, I guess, testimony, huh? Everything that I'm about to tell you is the truth. And God is my witness that everything that I'm telling you that's coming out of my mouth right now is the truth. God and the earth is my witness. Because, well, they were both there when all this was happening. One day, I just got so sick and tired of hoeing around. I had just got out of this somewhat relationship with somebody that was married. In fact, we both boasted about our affair in front of our significant others. I got tired of it. I didn't want to do it anymore. And then I started to make friends with this lady at work. Her name was Bleach Blonde. So me and Bleach Blonde started to hang out, and I thought that we were friends until she took me to her church. And I realized that her and her congregation were just kind of taking advantage of me and using me. And I didn't like her congregation or her church or what it was teaching. So I decided that I was going to go and do the research on my own. Little did I know that at this particular moment, a few months later, I would realize that God had been directing me my whole life. So one of the things that I read was that Jesus, was talking about truth and lies. And I don't know why I read it. I don't even know how I came upon the chapter. I just know that it happened. That Jesus said that the devil speaks lies fluently, that lies are his language. And I had realized that I had been living my whole life not as just as a hoe, but as a liar. And I didn't want to live like that anymore, especially if I wanted to go to heaven. Because I think the next line that I read is that the gateway to heaven is a narrow one. Or the gate or something to heaven is a narrow gate or road, something like that. And so I decided, you know what, I can't live a lie. I have to bear my cross like Jesus did. This is where things are going to get complicated. I want you to understand how complex this story is going to get. Because it's hard to listen to. Especially since I'm having to say it all over again. So I decided to go tell everybody at work that I had lied to that, hey, I'm not into chicks. I like dudes. And I ended up telling that to Bleach Blonde one day. Bleach Blonde, who I thought was my friend. And then she comes up to me and she tells me that who I wasn't right. And I'll never forget the look of disgust that she gave me that day. And on that day, I went home like Regina George, just screaming in that fucking burn book. Do not trust this bitch. She is fugly. So I was like, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna I'm gonna do the research on my own because there's something wrong with this religion. There's something wrong with what I'm being taught. Because here is my problem. God brought me into a conundrum. I had to start living the truth. And I had to repent for what I did by telling the truth. And yet I got burned for it. Sticks and stones were thrown by a sinner to another sinner. Because that sinner thought that their sin was lesser than mine. And like I said, I had no idea that everything that was about to happen was going to reveal the fact that everything that happened was God building and paving a bridge for me to get to the other side. So I went home and I was like, if I'm really going to understand this book, then I have to dissect it. This is a huge book and I have to get some kind of an understanding of what the whole narrative is, thinking that it was just one single book, not understanding that it was 66 different books. So I went home and I started to watch these YouTube videos called The Bible in a Minute. And then I learned how God created the heavens and the earth, about Noah, about Joseph, about Moses, yada, yada, yada. And then I got to Numbers. And there was a talking donkey in it. And I was just so I don't know what the word, it made me so happy knowing that there was a talking animal in the Bible, because it was like, I was thinking about cartoons like Shrek. I was like, cartoons, like God can make cartoons come to life. Like my thought was just so innocent and pure like a child that I just held onto it. Something about worshiping God and this donkey just awoke this inner child that I had just forgotten all about. And I was like, okay, well, I'm not gonna sit here and read this whole book. I'm gonna audiobook this thing, or I'm gonna have to go onto YouTube and find some kind of visualized stimulation about this book because I know it's gonna be long and boring. I can't do this. But the one thing that I did catch on the summarization is that God would keep punishing his people for turning on him. That was a narrative that just kept on repeating itself. God punished his people for turning on him. What am I missing? But why is another question. So, like, at this particular point, I started to have questions. If I'm wrong, then why is God, if who I am isn't right, then why has God been helping me since day one? Why has God saved my life? Why has he kept me healthy? Why? If he hates me so much, then why? And then I found this guy, not the guy here on TikTok, but it was another guy on YouTube called Frank the Tank. Frank the Tank had these videos where he was just creating like a visualized story to the book of Genesis. And I remember I was in my kitchen, I was cooking dinner, and then the story started to play. In the beginning, when God created the heavens and the earth was out form and void, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the deep. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light, and the light was good. Thus came evening and morning the first day. And I had gotten so touched in my heart, like I did with that donkey when I heard that, because this is why it moved me so much. Because when I went back and I literally listened to what it said, it was poetry. I was like, that's why I've been having a hard time reading the book, because it's poetry. But wait a minute, I asked myself. This poem is going on and on and on and on until the end. But because it was written in poetry, I had realized that that's what my problem was. That's why I had a hard time understanding it. So that's when I kind of had to go back into Shakespeare and read Romeo and Juliet again, because that's kind of like the lingo that it was given me. Now, at this point, I didn't know that there were multiple versions of the Bible. I just thought that there was just the one. And then I remember it got to the end after God was creating everything, and it ended like this. And I cried. I have no idea how this book could bring a grown man to tears like it did. But after God created everything, it said, "And God rested from the work that he had done, and he blessed it and made it holy." Because everything that God created was very good. And then I had to go back and I had to rewind it. And everything that God created was very good. And I had to go back and rewind it. And everything that God had created was very good. And I just started bawling my eyes out because it was so beautiful. It was so beautiful. And then I stopped crying. And more questions started to arise. Wait a minute. Why are you resting when I'm completely miserable? I don't understand how you're resting when when I'm suffering. How are you resting? How is everything holy? This makes no sense. Why did these horrible things happen to me in my life? At this particular point, the questions were mounting up more than I was getting answers. But like I said, God was building so that he could break me down. And everything that happened at this particular point was happening because God was making sure that it was happening to me, that I would understand it eventually. And then I was like, why? And then that voice started to come into my head. Well, just keep reading. Keep reading. Adam and Eve happens next. They ate a stupid apple off a tree. And the voice just repeated itself. Just keep going. Don't give up. Don't give up. Keep going. And then I started to get really bad into DRUGS. I guess that's a story for tomorrow.